the first thing to really approach, for me anyway, is from the physical point of view, why is such a phenomena in the public eye in the first place? Why is it such a push then for people to find this ultimate companion? And I'm not saying that that's wrong or nothing that you shouldn't strive to, and it's definitely something that I've always found personally, however much you try to fight it, it'll happen when it happens. And it happens in its own time, and it happens for a good reason. And I find that happens, if I look at the relationships of people around me, that happens, the same way. It's just the fact a lot of people make a harder time for themselves, including myself. But there's a distinction here to make, which is, to me, and I feel just on my own personal journey, we've kind of become out of touch with the emotion of love. And this is what, when I was going through all these different activations, I'll explain a little bit later in this video, it was all about a detachment from love, understanding what love actually is, and the difference between this just overpowering sensation of what it's like to feel love and be loved, where essentially nothing else matters. It's unconditional. There's no conditions on it. When that a relationship is totally in sync, there's no sort of preconditions. There's no, this is the way things should be because this is the way things are done. It's one of the things that irritates the shit out of me. And even down to the rituals that we have, and that's not to say there's anything wrong with these rituals, but it's like, why do we need Christmas, for example, to demonstrate to someone how much we love them? Why do we need anniversaries or Valentine's Day? Why can't you actually just be there all the time? Why can't you just be in that moment all the time? When someone you love is going through something, just accept that that's them at that particular point in time. And you realise that, it's more your own insecurities that come out. Sam said something to me yesterday about timeline shifting, and I went I just lost my shit for a little while. Not obviously on her, but, just generally just felt absolutely depressed. And she said to me, well, actually, what you're doing there is reflecting your own insecurities, because you've already made a judgment on the situation without even giving me a chance to finish what I was trying to say. And she was absolutely right. So, I believe part of the reason why such connections, soulmates, twin flames, soul connections, and I'll explain the difference in a second, are so intense, is because they reflect something in our consciousness. They reflect our disconnection with the energy of love. They reflect who we are about ourselves. If you look into the works of people like Dr. Michael Newton, Brian Weiss, there's plenty of others out there. I suppose they were the ones that I really sort of had a connection with when I first started on this journey. A lot of them, these are people that focused on past life regression, focused on the evolution of the soul, and accumulated vast amounts of evidence with regards to how different things, how these mechanisms work. And I found it, especially when I was starting to get interested in the spirit world and the paranormal, that I really wanted to know how the mechanisms work. You can buy books by famous mediums, and it's great to see how their lives panned out, but there's no mechanistic approach to it. It just is. And I believe that everything has to have a methodology behind it. There has to be even if it's just something that happens very quickly, like making a cup of tea, for example. You can make a cup of tea, and it's just that if you just make a cup of tea, you chuck a milk in, you you chuck the water in, you add the sugar, or you chuck the water in and add the milk in and add the sugar, and voila, cup of stir it, voila, cup of tea. But there is, when you actually break it down to its the actual thought process, is how your mind and your brain are controlling each movement of your hands. The actual the nerves that are triggered, and the sort of biology behind a simple act of making a cup of tea. There's a methodology behind it. There is something that can be broken down to its basest forms. And I've always liked that approach to it. I've always liked to find out what kind of makes things tick and collect evidence as to how that actually works. And it's been something apparent with me throughout my entire life, because I've always wanted to understand the different parts of myself that have reflected who I am, because it's a journey of self-discovery. It's a journey of understanding the self, and if you understand the self, you are far more likely to understand the environment around you, in my opinion, because essentially everything inside you is a reflection of everything outside you. And what I mean by that is how you react to situations and how you react to stimuli influences your behavior, and that influence then that influence or that response then will generally impact how things pan out around you. That is the physical level to this phenomena. So with these works, they discuss the idea of soul groups, of soul connections, and twin flames. So I think I want to make a bit of a distinction between what these are. I believe a soul group that essentially is like your soul family. These are people that incarnate with you lifetime after lifetime. They've incarnated with you maybe for many generations. They sometimes have taken different roles. So sometimes your lover has been your mother. Sometimes you'll always take the same lover. Sometimes there will be gaps, and other people will step back for a while and work on something else and then come back in. And I believe that's definitely happened to me when going through regression hypnosis and looking through my own past lives and different studies and things I've done on myself, that certain people have come in and certain people have occupied different roles. I believe that soul groups, according to Dr. Newton, people do progress beyond soul groups and soul families, and these can be you have a bit like the family unit that we have here on Earth. You have the sort of close family, and then you have like the extended groups. So these are people that you kind of have an instant connection with, but because you already know them, it's like there's the connection here is slightly less intense than a twin flame or a soul connection. And that is because these people are on the same path as you, and they generally are going to be travelling with you throughout the course of your life, or they're going to be a reoccurring person, or they might have already been around when you were quite young. You might have gotten to know them when you were younger. Obviously, if this is a sake of a parent or a sibling, then that connection is there from birth. And though people find that a lot of times they will reconnect with those that have been like lovers in the past or together in the past, a soulmate isn't just about a romantic relationship. You can have a soul connection with an animal, a place, people that remember past lives, for example, people that have a sudden memory or connection to a place in a past life, have very much a similar sort of feeling, a similar sort of connection. It is a connection from the past that has instigated a memory, that has uncovered a memory that before that has been hidden. With regards to a twin flame, then, for example, this is what is a phenomenon I prefer to call something like soul splitting, and I think it's closer to the case that we've done in our Paranormal Evidence Archives episode 14 and 15 regarding the case we did with Amy and Alice, to give a little bit of a background about this case, and this is the closest I've personally come to experiencing the connection, the actual existence of this phenomena. And I suppose a good person to look into, though I haven't, I've only looked into him slightly, which is why I'm not going to quote it directly, is Anthony Peake. I know Anthony Peake has done a lot of work on the incarnation of the soul, and how a person can have many souls actually inside them, some along for the ride. He talks, there's a good talk that he's done on Watkins' books that kind of goes into this in more detail, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. But the closest I've come to actually witnessing this phenomena genuinely was we were called in to do a case by a lady that lives locally, and we'd actually worked for before, who has a little girl who's very, very, very psychic, has a very strong natural connection. And when we call it gifted or psychic, it's like any other gift or talent. It's something that we can all do. Some have a stronger connection than others, and like some people have a stronger connection to artistry, some people become better football players than others. We all have a skill set, a talent set, where there are certain things, certain attributes that we are probably much more better than other people, or a little bit more gifted than other people. Sometimes it's a little bit more abstract. Some people can be better thinkers or better lovers or better, it's all about what you're choosing to experience within your life, and what you've worked on or been drawn to work on in previous lives, and have stored those. Though the actual physical memory of being through a situation has not is not easily recallable to the vast majority of people, the skill set still remains. It's a bit like I suppose I liken it to when you go through an RPG game and you level up. So it is a very sort of similar. I think it's a very sort of similar way of looking at things. With this case, the lady came to us about her daughter, and a face of a little girl was appearing in photographs around her, and this was a very strange phenomena that was coming through very powerful. It was affecting things in her house. And her daughter had actually turned around to her, unbeknownst to me at the time, and said that she'd remembered a past life connection where she was a young lady by the name of Amy. It was a child actually by the name of Amy that passed away in an explosion that happened in the kitchen. Her mother's surname was Llewellyn, and she had 4 siblings, and 2 people died in the explosion. This information was coming from a 4-year-old girl, which you can imagine, was quite shocking for her mother, bless her. When we came to investigate this information, unbeknownst to myself, and we generally tend to do this as a matter of course with our investigations, is one medium will always go along with very little knowledge of what's happened, so that they can pick things up and further validate the information that's coming through. But everything that comes through, and you can actually watch this video on our YouTube channel, validated what this little girl had said. But what had happened is this little girl, Amy, was this woman's daughter, was her past incarnation, was her past life, and because the activation of her psychic gift or something that had been done to them in a former incarnation. Now this could go back thousands of years. This doesn't have to be something that was done to the spirit, the soul in the present incarnation, or it could have been something that soul had chose to experience. But for one reason or another, their past incarnation had physically or had manifested as a ghost, and was actually causing demonstrable paranormal activity that we could genuinely record, and we had recorded in these videos. It was actually quite distressing at one point, because the normal methods that we use to clear spirits from a house, to help them to cross over, to help them to raise their vibration and connect with those that can actually help them on the spiritual realms, didn't work, and when we tried to help this little girl, she was actually sent back. Luckily, and I think by a great flash of inspiration by my good friend and colleague Richard Oliver, and with no small input from Sean Durham at the time, we actually helped this little girl by sort of regretting her spirit back to the time of her present incarnation, and almost in a sense joining the two soul energies back together, so they once again became. So I believe the soul can split, and I believe that's where the idea sort of come from. This I believe is very rare, and it's when someone chooses to experience something for a greater good or greater potential or greater purpose. The actual chance of these two souls meeting is extremely rare. I've been doing the paranormal now for a good 5 or 6 years and studied a lot of cases. Rarely. I had to dig very, very deep, and I was very lucky to find someone that could give me just a slight bit of insight as to what was happening with the case I've just mentioned. And that was by random chance, that someone I was speaking to at the time and had a very strong push to tell her about this case, literally came up with something that was happening, that she'd heard of through a string of events that didn't directly affect this person, that basically give me some information. So I feel this is very, very rare. However, the idea that is commonly confused with this sort of connection is what I call a soul connection. This is, and I'll explain this as clearly as I possibly can, and I've had 4 of these encounters, actually probably 5 now of these encounters, that have had different strengths within my life so far. One of which became a romantic relationship then, or became a very, very strong soulmate connection. However, if I hadn't been through the previous versions then, or the previous encounters, I don't think this connection would have been as strong, because I just simply don't think I would have had the level of consciousness. When you've encountered someone that is a soul connection, I'm going to call them a torchbearer, because what they do is they reflect so deeply parts of your own consciousness. Now, we are all mirrors for each other, and I've explained this briefly earlier in this little talk, but these connections tend to reflect on a deeper level. Normally with just a general person reflecting things to you, they reflect a general insecurity, they reflect how you're feeling about a certain situation at a certain time. With a soul connection, they reflect everything. And this doesn't have to be with a human. It can actually be with an energy. It can be with an animal. It can be with a place. But it has a really deep connection. And what it does is, what I believe, and the common misconception, it's a process of having. We believe that at the end of this activation, that we will have something, that we will be with someone, or we will. It's not. It's a process of becoming. And there's a general distinction of that, because it's a process of self-discovery. A general energy activation through a soul connection with a person, place, being, will generally start with a euphoric period. So it'll be a chance encounter that will instigate a euphoric period where you feel that you can do absolutely anything. That's the initial part of the activation, is the sense that you get a feeling that you can do absolutely anything. You get a sense of your full potential. And that generally can last for a few days, and then suddenly this connection is gone. It's either withdrawn, or if it's a person, if it's a person, they suddenly become unobtainable or unreachable, and it can sometimes very much be, especially when it's between two people, be one-sided. It's because it works on the subconscious level to the one side. So if it's an attraction between two people, to the one person it can be a very powerful, very deep and meaningful experience. To the other, it could just be another chance encounter. There might be something strange or something that they feel quite perplexed by, but it will not be as near as strong as it is, or it might not seem to either party that it is that strong. And then instigates what people call the runner and the chaser sort of experience. Is the person who has had the powerful experience, and normally when you have these experiences, they're an activation of spiritual or esoteric energies. They're an activation of things on the energetic realm, and because a lot of the times, these are instigation, these instances are they're essentially awakening something inside you. It sends everything about you into overdrive, and you completely lose your sense of logic for a while. And that's where the material aspect, the logic of the left brain sort of comes in and sees this as a connection that will and sees a projected outcome based on the views of the past. But like most sort of awakening periods, of most ideas of a spiritual awakening, these connections, you generally tend not to have a basis for comparison. You've got no frame of reference with them, so you generally just sort of you try and base them on a frame of reference of what's happening, and you tend to lose you tend to sort of lose your focus within inside them and become very absorbed in them. And generally what follows from them is a series of what I would say is paranormal events, and that could be that the connection is explored essentially in the energetic realms. This is why we have a lot of connection within dreams, within meditations. We have a lot of connection with this, but we're not really essentially connected. We can be connecting to the person at some point, but we're actually more connecting with the energy and what that person, entity or animal has reflected inside ourselves, and what that means for us and what that has stirred up in our journey. These can be of different levels of intensity, and as I said, can sometimes have the outcome of you spending a great deal of time with that person. I believe that our animals actually reflect very deeply on a soul level our connection with ourselves and our connection with them. I think it's something that especially pets, dogs essentially do that greatly. I remember having an experience once where we were actually in a restaurant, and a drunk came in and started a fight with one of the waiters, and I don't know if it was instinct or what it was, but Sam just decided to get involved and get in the way of in between them, which I thought was quite humorous. And though at the point I was thinking, what the hell are you doing? You're going to get yourself hurt. But she generally sort of acted on instinct at that time, and the drunk had a dog with him, and he ran away basically from the fact he wasn't going to get his fight, or he was in too much of a state, and left the dog in the restaurant. The dog's running around absolutely scared shitless, and I'm thinking to myself, poor bloody animal, and there was nothing that we could do except for let him go. Now I wanted to take him home with me, but there's nothing we could do except let him go because he really wanted to be with his owner. And I asked out, I said, well, why the hell, why is this? And the answer that come back is that a lot of the time, and this has been validated several times to me, is they choose us. We choose them, but they also choose us. And I feel that is a very strong message of these connections. So if you're going through and you're experiencing these connections, what I find is is generally you'll have information sort of downloaded over the course of, so it can be a course of a couple of months, a couple of years. It can be a very, you're either drawn to information. Sometimes when I've gone through it, I'm actually drawn to certain information and drawn to certain people. Sometimes I will get someone give me a name, and that name won't make any sense. That name won't make any sense until I've actually met that person, and that person will hold something for me. Excuse the background noise there. Whether that's a message, and it could just be a very, very quick chance encounter. The biggest thing that you can do is not expect an outcome, and just take each bit of information as it comes and try and understand it in the way that reflects yourself and way that reflects who you are. If there is meant to be a further connection between you and whatever's activated that energy, then you will generally find that it happens, and sometimes it happens not in the way that you expect it to. I remember seeing and this happens all the time now for me. I don't generally need that connection with the actual emotion of it. Essentially, I sense a lot of the time things that, potential outcomes to things, and sometimes I get very irritated when they don't happen the way that I saw them. But when I actually look back and see actually how things have worked out, I suppose there's a good one of the guiding principles for us lately is our dog got attacked last year, and for the last year Sam has been working on bringing, sort of reintegrating our dog Bagel with other dogs. And she kept seeing last year herself in a field doing work with her, and there'd been other dogs around, etc. And we thought that it was shown to be like a summer course, so we thought she would end up going away and go into some sort of dog training regiment or that kind of thing, so she could learn more about them. And for the last 2 years she's been studying in depth some of the things to do with the nature of dogs and the spiritual or esoteric nature of connection with the earth and animals. Now, when I look back, that didn't actually happen, because our projected outcome was there being a physical course where, you would actually go along and go to a class, etc. But what a course really was is a period of learning, and the image that she saw actually manifested. But what it was being of certain people coming into our lives and playing a part in our lives and being actually a godsend within our lives, that just through their very actions alone, but how they are with their dogs, and how that there's a difference between how they are and how we are, and how we can actually emulate that behaviour by not creating a lot of the instances we were creating. Because when we see another dog, for example, we think, oh my goodness, she's going to go and she's going to start barking and it's going to be a fight. That just feeling alone and projecting that feeling, she was picking up on that and then essentially causing that outcome to happen. So when you're having these intense connections, it's a case of letting go of the potential scenario, and that's very hard when you're looking at the emotional context of it. For many years, I never found a partner. I never found someone to be involved in something I always desperately wanted. But there was always this part of me inside me that just knew that there was only ever going to be one person, and I've only ever really been with one person in my life. And I always knew, that it was the right person. And deep down, when I've had these connections, they don't necessarily have to be male to female either. I've actually had them with, I think 2 of these connections I've had have been male. And because they've been male, there's not been any sort of the added sort of pretext with with sexuality that comes with it. You know, when a male and a female of the same sexual orientation become attracted to each other, there's always that kind of that overtone, that society overtone. And that's because, again, it comes back to, as I said earlier in the video, our attitudes towards love. There's an absence in our connection with love, and it's an absence in the connection between self-love. And that was the biggest thing that I've learned throughout having these people in my life and having these journeys is the biggest thing that I've had to learn to do is love myself. And when I actually came to that conclusion and actually started putting it into practice, I was much more ready for Sam to come into my life. And that was a very, very deep connection. It happened very quickly because the signs of it I recognized instantly. I understood what it was, and I understood it was what, again, one of those things that was manifested. It was what I was being told all along, that I will find a deep connection with someone, but it might not necessarily be the person that bears the torch originally. Again, torchbearers, as I'm going to call them, are just people that come to you that may have a past life connection. They may have a past life connection, but they have information on your own journey that lights the way, and there's something that you give them as well. Just by sometimes we look at things in a way of, you have to do something to make a contribution. You don't necessarily have to do something. We are not human doing, we're human being, and that is a general there's a general distinction there. Sometimes you just have to be you. And the biggest advice I can give when you go through these experiences is just to trust your instincts and to try not to go for the knee-jerk reaction. When it gets more interesting is when the paranormal stuff happened, because I found that when I've had it with connections with people before, you've had these paranormal incidences. When Sam and I got together, she had it all within the space of a week or 2 weeks. She had astral projection. She had my brother around her plaguing her, which I do talk more about in a recent Pathways to Healing. There's 2 videos there. I think they're entitled Brothers Between Worlds, where I talk about the connection that John and the role Jonathan played in Sam and I getting together, and that it's no longer a transcendental experience, because with these sort of connections you're there all the time. You kind of get to that plateau, and you just understand that, that's happening, and then you will sort of, when you're ready to sort of move on to a next level, that's when a kind of more a much more again, another boost in consciousness happens, and you have another sort of transcendental experience, and I suppose it's one of them things that you get to a certain level and you experience that level for a while, and when you're ready to move on to something new, these torchbearers can come along and really sort of push you in a different direction, or elevate the direction of which you're going. It depends. Some people can have work on one direction all their lives, or multiple lifetimes. I feel for me, over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, I've been drawn in so many different directions. I'm almost pulling my hair out by it, and it's learning to understand that although you're being shown different things and given different bits of information, you are traveling a part of a story. You are not at the end point of the story. And I suppose that's what I wanted to get off my chest was regarding this. I feel that since putting the video together of what we did for Amy, I feel that that was very much a validation of just when you feel that you have everything figured out. Never feel that you have everything figured out, because you don't. It's as simple as that. The universe is so vast. I love it when people say, "Oh yes, but science understands everything of nature." Okay, if science understands everything of nature, A, what's reality, and B, why are we so dramatically out of balance with it? Just think about that for a second. The basis of wisdom is to realize that you know nothing. So that's generally the just a little talk I wanted to do today, a little video I wanted to do just about what do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. This has been a little bit of a longer video. But I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that I hope you subscribe to the channel. Let me know as well what you'd like me to talk about. If there's something deeper you'd like me to go into with regards to this, then I'm happy to work on another video, doing a little talk, or answer some of your questions. If you do have any questions, please leave in the comment section below, and I'll see you again soon. You take care now.